All right, welcome back to the Golden Belt Buckle podcast. If I look like I'm wearing the same clothes as I was in my last video, it's because I was. I'm doing some batch recording here on vacation, making the most of it, enjoying the beautiful day, and I figured, you know what, it's a great time to do some podcasting. So I want to talk to you about my own experience with a driver trainer. It's a bad experience with a driver trainer. So was that be my own driver trainer nightmare story? For all I know, I'm his nightmare trainee story, right? It's all just a matter of perspective, I guess, isn't it? But from my perspective, right, I'm finding this to be a topic of interest for a number of reasons. I've been watching a lot of videos documenting all the different problems from management's perspective, from the driver's perspective, and from the trainee's perspective. So the trainer and the trainee's perspective. Categorizing them, and I'm going to throw my own experience into the ring here. So I got my license 2002. I had just turned 22 when I got my license. 9/11 actually happened about a week after. So that's another story in of itself, how bad the border was messed up, for how long, years. So I was pretty excited. I was young, I was wet behind the ears. For my own part, at this time in my life, I was way too agreeable, okay? I got intimidated by people way too easy. And that is partly, I think, what led to the problems. From my perspective, as we get into this, you'll see my trainer, he was a bit of a dinosaur in the industry. I actually don't think he was even in the right headspace to be training students. I'm not sure why he was training students at this point in his life. So I got to Strathroy, he lived in Strathroy, and I go into his apartment to meet him. He had a couple of his own trucks that he had on the road as well, so he had a couple of employees working for him, and in addition he was working with the company that I was employed with. And I was excited initially because when we got talking, it seemed like we should be hitting it off really well. I mean, we found out we both had the same views on politics and religion, and we even came from the same religious denomination. So it couldn't get any better, I thought. And we should have got along good, but like I said. Anyways, so we get driving, and I found out very quickly he was a very impatient person. He didn't like, he was teaching me the basics, reading all your signs, how to back up and this sort of thing. We had some small talk, there were some good times, but he really didn't have any patience. I had a hard time learning how to shift the way the company wanted you to shift. I could only shift the way the MTO wanted you to, and that's not really, double clutching it like that. It's not the best way to shift. So, yeah, I just noticed when he was teaching me, he was a bit impatient. But then we got going. He had some other weird proclivities. We were driving 5 hours on, 5 hours off. Okay, that's how we could do it. The rules were different back then. And he wanted you to drive 5 on, 5 off. He would hold you to it till we got to the delivery. And that could be in California, could be Texas, could be anywhere, right? So you slept for 5, drove for 5 until you got where you were going. And if anyone's ever tried that before, you get really tired. You're good for maybe the first shift, and then after that you start getting really tired because you've been up for 15 hours and having a couple naps during the day, right? And so his answer for everything seemed to be, you're in the big leagues now. You're in the big leagues now, right? You should be able to drive like this. You got to build your stamina. Well, middle of the night, I've been taking these little miniature naps all day, and I'm falling asleep behind the wheel. He's in the bunk. He wants us to keep going. He has no idea how tired I am, that we could have drove right off a bridge because I was exhausted, right? And, so just that kind of thing. He also didn't like it. He didn't like it when you would fill up the fuel tanks until the fuel tanks were virtually empty. For him, he wanted to get max points on his cards. So he didn't see any need to be filling up the fuel tanks until they were almost empty. Like, he liked to run the slosh. And me, I've even now, 25 years later, I don't feel comfortable doing with that. I don't think that's what you call running smart. You don't know if the the fuel station or truck stop that you think you're going to fuel at is going to actually have fuel. You don't know that, right? I've got to places and they've got no electricity or whatever, their pumps are down, or they just don't take your card. I've had that happen. You know, so to me, you should always have an excess amount of fuel, okay? But he didn't like that. He always ran it down to the slosh. And then the one day I went to, because I was driving, I pulled in. I was probably exhausted and needed to wake up. I pull in, I start fueling. He comes out of the bunk. "What the frig are you doing, man?" I said, "I'm fueling. It's almost empty." So "What do you mean it's almost empty? It's got 1/8 of a tank." "Yeah, that's almost empty." He said, No. This is ridiculous. Don't you ever do this again, okay? You don't fuel unless I tell you to, okay? You had 1/8 of a tank, blah, 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 blah. Right? He's just going off on me for fueling the truck. And I didn't do anything wrong, I'm sorry. So there was that. And then, you know, I didn't think he ran very smart. And then on top of that, he didn't like to, he had this weird belief about driving through thunderstorms, okay? He didn't like slowing down. I'm driving through thunderstorms and he's telling me that I can see when I can't see. Yeah, I said that. He's telling me that I can see when I know I can't see. He says, "You don't need to slow down." "Why not? I can't see anything." "Yes, you can. You're up in a big rig, man. We're in the big leagues." That's the answer for everything. We're in the big leagues. He said the reason why the four-wheelers can't see is because they've got the hood virtually at eye level. So when the rain comes down, it bounces off the hood and they can't actually see what's going on because they've got the rain coming down, they've got the rain bouncing up. So they can't really see what's going on. "Oh yeah, okay, I guess I can see." So admittedly, I let the guy drive my truck. Just a note, when you're driving the truck, it doesn't matter if you have a trainer with you, you're driving the truck, you're driving the truck. Okay, you're in charge of the truck when you're driving the truck to a certain extent, right? Unless you're doing something reckless, you know, there's a fine line, but he's telling me to do something that's willfully dangerous. So just things like that. He was really impatient. He was highly disagreeable, like just too disagreeable. He didn't seem to like teaching, and his views on driving, to me, were archaic and dangerous. He got fired right while I was sitting in the truck with him. We had just crossed back into Canada from on the Ambassador Bridge, and he had his own trucks, I mentioned. We had been running like crazy. I had been ready to fall asleep at the wheel on more than one occasion, all the way back from California. Was it Bakersfield? Somewhere. We picked up a load of celery. That's what we primarily did. You go down some goat trail in California to pick up your produce. And so we just crossed the border. He needed to get back so he could do some paperwork for his own trucks. And so we ran hard. But because we got back quicker, dispatch had a load that needed to be covered quicker. And so they told us, "Hey, drop the trailer in London and we need you to pick up another trailer, head back down to Florida." Something like that. I'm making that up, but that's essentially it, right? Just drop your trailer. You're going somewhere else. And he said, "Billy, I'm going to tell them a fib." "Okay." So he told me, we don't have any hours left. And he gets a phone call. He put down the satellite. Gets a phone call from Rick, the operations officer. He says, "We can see your hours. You have hours. All right, we want you to drop that trailer and go pick up the load that we said. That's how it's going to be." He said, "No, I can't. I don't have hours." And he stuck to his story. He hangs up the phone. I said, "Well, what happened?" So "I got fired." I said, "You're done. Bring the truck back." So I thought, well, good, you're an asshole. You should be fired, right? He deserved to be fired. He was just off the wall. So yeah, he ended up getting fired right there while I was in the truck with him. And when I spoke with management after, I went into the head office and I talked to management, and management told me, they said this guy had caused more than one of their employees to quit because he was so agitated and disillusioned with the company, and he was so disillusioned with the company, his bad attitude would rub off on everybody he trained. Now I'm looking back at that and I'm thinking, if driver retention meant anything to you, why would you allow someone to train your drivers who hates your company? Why would you not put someone in the truck who's going to sell your company, right? Who's going to inspire your new driver to embrace the company, become a company man, right? Years later, 25 years in this industry, I understand now. I don't feel that training is taken seriously. I think there's a lot of people, and again, just as the drivers have dinosaur beliefs, I think there are dinosaurs within management as well. I'm sorry, but there is. The idea that one driver, just because someone knows how to drive a truck, that means they're qualified to train everybody. There's more to driving a truck than just shifting gears and backing trailers up. Interpersonal skills matter too, but I don't think that that's really appreciated. Even now, I don't think that's appreciated. Every training video you get as a driver, it's usually do this or that to be safe, to drive safe, right? Safe weather, bad weather driving, it's never how to develop interpersonal skills. I know when I was training people, I never was given any course on interpersonal skills. I learned all those on my own. So yeah, it made no sense to me why they would have him in. So that's a management issue. They didn't take the training seriously. They felt one driver was as good as another, and they knowingly put a guy in the cab with their new hires who was going to make you hate the company. So looking back on this whole situation, I can kind of understand. I'm 45 years old. He was 40. He was about 20 years older than me. I've now got, about 23 years more life behind me than I did when he was training me. I've been kicked in the gonads a few times. I know how life can turn on you on a whim. He just wasn't in a good spot. His personal life sounded like a mess. He was divorced, and he told me on several occasions there was a girl that he really, really wanted to date, or he had a chance with, but he blew it. I said, what did you do? I did something stupid. That's all I ever get. He wouldn't go into it any further. I did something stupid. His life was basically a country western song. That's what it sounded like to me. It was a pity party. And look, people come by, sometimes they come by it honestly, right? I don't know if his disagreeableness is what led to this, or if he had suffered some kind of trauma which made him more disagreeable, which made him fail, right? We talk about success in the trucking industry. One way to be a failure is to be too disagreeable, right? To be disrespectful to everybody like this guy was, right? They just had till they have enough of you. So I don't know. It's hard to judge people, right? I didn't know him before. I didn't know what he was like. I just know that by the time he came into my life, things had gotten so out of hand with him, he shouldn't have been training people. So yeah, okay, so that's my story. That's my trainer nightmare story. Like I said, maybe I was his nightmare as a trainee. I don't know. I'm sure he's a good guy. But it was a bad show. I am, like I said at the start of this video, I am currently collecting all the different data from other driver trainer horror stories, taking note of it. I want to put a more in-depth podcast together looking at the perspectives of the company, the trainer, the trainee, what's going on that's wrong, what's going on that's right, maybe what we should do more of. So that's going to be coming up at some point. Until then, if you don't mind, I would like it if you were to like, comment, subscribe, and if you want to come on and maybe talk about your own story, maybe you have a trainee horror story, maybe, I know there's a lot of those. If you are my old trainer and you recognize me and you want to come on and have a discussion about it, if you're still alive and kicking, I wish you well. I didn't give your name for a reason, because I don't want the drama. But if you want to come on, if you're watching YouTube and you come across this, and that was about 23 years ago. So if I look familiar to you and our story sounds familiar, reach out. You can tell me how annoying I was. Because maybe I was a bit annoying, I don't know. Anyway, till next time, keep the rubber side down and drive safe. Take care, folks.